I can't go to Sabah so if they don't allow me.
I'm blocked from Sarawak.
Yeah, but how could that be? All right. Assalamualaikum. Good morning. Today, welcome to ZAID Ibrahim Podcast. We have two special guests with us today. Professor Wong Chin Huat. He's a political scientist with Sunway University. And also we have Chow-Ying, well-known practicing lawyer and activist as well on human rights. So I'm glad to welcome both of you. Yeah, we're going to talk a bit about everything, particularly on matters related to corruption. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to start with you, Prof. Huh?
Please call me Chin Huat.
Yeah, Chin Huat. Okay, I call you Chin Huat and I call you Chow-Ying.
Yes.
Can you just 2 minutes of what you do in addition to what I've just described? Your passion, your preoccupation now, and
thank you very much. I have been active on efforts in democratizing Malaysia since going back 1998. I started off as a political columnist for Chinese press, and later I write in English and Malay. Today I'm Sina Harian columnist. I was active in Bersama for 17 years, being arrested and beaten up by police 3 times.
That's not bad.
Yeah. And but my main research interest is actually how to make political division works. In Malaysia, people like to talk about unity. I come from a perspective that if you have democracy, you're bound to have and you need to have division. The whole thing here is how do you make division productive and healthy, as we have it in sport, rather than you have it in war, that you try to eliminate and destroy your enemies. So I have been working on electoral system, on parliamentary reform, and so on.
Okay. Chow-Ying, please.
Yes. So I'm a practicing lawyer. So in my daily job, I do commercial cases, civil litigation. So how do I get into this activism? I think it was because I joined the Civil Rights Committee of the KL and Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall. And that is where I start to get to know people like Chin Huat, Thomas, Sui Sing, and all the civil society friends, and I started to get involved. I think my early beginning of activism is on the abolition of the death penalty. And then I also got involved in Bersih rally at the back end. And then eventually I become a Bersih steering committee during Thomas' term. For 2 terms, I think. Yeah. And then now I'm in Project Sama, which is Project Stability and Accountability for Malaysia. We are really working towards institutional reform. We believe that after elections, there are, it doesn't just end there. After elections, there are still a lot of work to be done in terms of bettering the system, bettering the institutions. So that's where we are.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very big agenda you have, both of you. Huh? Okay, Chin Huat, let's talk about corruption.
Yeah.
I mean, in this world, everything has got an index. You have index for excellence, index for educational excellence, for football, you have ranking in FIFA. Where are we in corruption index?
We are in the middle. I mean that things have improved a little bit after 2018's transition.
What number? Do you know exactly?
We were at 57 in the 2024 Corruption Perception Index, and that was the same in 2023. So if you go back a little bit before, it was worse, slightly improved after 2018, but then, you get back somewhere there.
Who decides this? The criteria? Who determines?
Now this is by Transparency International.
Transparency
they would reach out to expert, and then from that expert review, you come to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because we have not made progress, it's already 7 years. What makes you think we're going to be better?
I think it would be
Are there positive signs?
Yeah, there would be ongoing challenges. Let me put it this way. If you go back to 1982, was it 1982? That when we started, let me see, when did we start the Look East policy? 1982, right?
I'm not quite sure exactly.
Okay, anyway,
yeah, it was Mahathir's time.
Let's say we during Mahathir time, we had this Look East policy first at Japan, then at Korea, right? And Korea has vast influence on our daily life. But there's something we are catching up with Korea. They have sent 4 ex-presidents to jail. All of them has to do with corruption, sometimes with treason as well. The 5th one is on the way. And we have sent the first ex-prime minister. And to me, that's something very important. It's not a good thing when your former head of state get involved in corruptions. That is akin that your body suffering, experience bad illness, right? But the fact that you could actually send them to jail, that shows that your system is fighting back. So for me, that is actually a huge progress. You send a message, there's no impunity just because you are right at the top of the power, therefore you can get scot-free, right? But what we need to do is to make sure that the state apparatus, the prosecutorial authorities do not act only in a partisan way. Do not go after someone only if that someone is our power. They should be there in check, and it should apply the same standards on politicians on all sides.
Okay. Donald Trump seems to have immunity on all this. The Supreme Court has given him immunity.
Yeah.
Why? Is that something that we should be concerned with? This is supposed to be the mother of democracy. Yet, the president has that kind of immunity. So what signal does it give to the rest of the world leaders?
Now, if you look at the immunity given to the head of state is confined during the period when you're in power. You're supposed to, you would not be free after that. But in the case of parliamentary system, especially in a constitutional monarchy, the monarchs enjoy it because they are not carrying that as a personal act. So they have to be protected. But that doesn't cover crimes, personal crimes like corruptions and so on. If a head of state was involved in killing, you will still have to face the law. And I disagree that with what you say that America is a mother of democracy.
Well, it used to be.
It's a mother of presidential system because that come from them. But overall, America has performed quite badly. If you look at democracy from all aspects, they have never been a good student. They're just some noisier student, so that everyone look at them and say they represent democracy.
Yeah. Okay. Chow-Ying, tell me a bit about Sama.
So project.
What's your first project?
So we actually have 4 main pillars in Project Sama. Actually 5. The first one, constitutional monarchy. We want to defend the constitutional monarchy. Second, we are talking about parliamentary representations that will entail the representations in our system. Third is the rule of law, which we came out with a report last 2 weeks ago, looking at prosecutorial conduct in high-profile corruption cases. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. And then the 4th pillar is decentralizations. Federalism. So that will also include decentralization, local council elections, the relationship between Sabah, Sarawak, and Semenanjung, and all these bigger issues. And the last one is actually something that we felt is very important as well, which is cultural war. Dealing with culture war, dealing with diffusing culture war. Yeah. So during the KK issues, we initiated a campaign together with some of the NGO and the media, Maaf Sahif Batin 365, which means that we ask for forgiveness. We also extend forgiveness 365 days, not just during the Ramadan month. So this is really trying to take away the oxygens of, at that point in time, the feeling of all these kekemang issues, the religions issues. Yeah.
Okay. Underlying all this principle you're fighting for, before I come to that, I just want to ask you, don't you think that the biggest problem we have is our deep-seated racial distrust amongst each other?
True. But that comes back to a very flawed political system.
How?
Now, why do people feel it so that our differences are so important? It doesn't come from the fact how different we are. It comes from how we perceive our life opportunity will be affected by the system. If everyone finds that their life opportunity is determined largely by what they do, the decision they made, in the personal decision they made, then societies are less likely to be involved in communal tension, right? However, if you believe that, say, the opportunity before you, the challenges before you, is largely defined by your group membership. For example, how many people in the country share the same heritage like me, speak the same language, worship the same God, and all my freedoms and my rights are tied back to that, then you have no choice but to come together. So for me, what is important is to make sure that our system encourage citizenship that tie back the consequence in our life more to our personal conduct, our decision, rather than group membership. So I do not believe in a homogeneous society. I don't think that works or that's desirable. What we need is to make our division productive and healthy. So in the sense of like, even in cultural decision, as far as we can role play whatever thing I want, right? I can act like a Kelantanese on Monday, and Tuesday I want to be a Penang Chinese, whatever things I want to be, right? To the extent that as long as I don't affect others, I should have that right. So to be able to speak different language, to understand different culture, all of those should come to me as a choice that enrich me. And I see this not as a Western idea, but this has a strong root if you look at history of Islam. I happen to be a student of Islamic history in Form 6, so I learned that and later in Al-Hujarat, Surah 13, that humans are made man and woman into different tribes so that we get to know each other. So for me, that should be the positive things we look at. Having choices, having competition, and make sure no one really pay to be punished for things they are not they are not able to control, including misery in life. So that's where solidarity come in.
Okay. I want to start now with political corruption, okay? Because, as you know, things have not improved. In fact, I think it's getting worse, in my view. But I don't have statistics. But purely from, observation and all that. Now, we know this reform that we talk about. Some people say, we must have separation of powers between AG and public prosecutor. Some people say Parliament must be answerable to this and that. Now, I want to propose to you, can we ever get to a situation in this country where things are transparent? There's no secret.
Possible. It will take some time.
Where official secrets no longer there. Because I think the reason why politicians are corrupt is because they know. So long as people don't know, what is there?
Right.
To prevent them from continuing in there. So why is it so difficult for us to repeal or at least amend the Official Secrets Act? Why is the resistance to that?
I think every state would reserve certain things as secrets for confidentiality, for security purposes. That's always fair. But I understand where you come from. Why do we have more than necessary? Why do we allow this law to be used to protect people in power rather than to protect the interests of the state and the people, right? It comes back to the fact this is a hangover from the past when we live in a one-party predominant system where if I win, if I stay right at the top of the food chain, no one can check on me. And if possible, I may pass it to my son or son-in-law in 1 or 2 generation time, right? So that create no reason for me to open it up, for my behaviors, for my conduct to be examined by anyone. I want to keep all these things private as far as possible. And all I demand of the population is to say, trust me. Trust me, because that word is so dangerous. You cannot trust other Malaysians who are different from you. You, of course, cannot trust other countries who are out to recolonize us and so on. But to me, the whole idea of democracy is to recognize the world is dangerous, not only from chaos, from external threat, but also internal threat, by which I mean the betrayal of the elites. If we use the management language, is called the problem of the principal and the agent. That your manager would betray the stakeholder. If you want to fall back to Malay culture, it's a simple proverb: harapkan pegar, but pegar makan padi. You count on the wild pheasant to control pests in your paddy field, but this pheasant has an interest to eat up your paddy as well, right? How do we deal with this? My solution would be to say that you need to make sure there are more than one pegar in the field, that you can fire that pegar if this pegar eat up your paddy, right? And that's mean we ultimately need to have competition, because if you have a competition that everyone has a chance to win, but no one has that confidence that you be the winner, then what happened to you? You would want a fair system. You dare not to dream for the maximum, because it's unlikely you're going to get it, but you want to make sure you do not get into the worst outcome. And the current system is whoever in power, they happen to be political gambler. They think their luck is so good. If I'm in Prime Minister today, I can be Prime Minister for another 10 years. I do not even want to have any term limit whatsoever, and until the reality crash on them.
I think coming back to that one about transparency, because of the 61 years and what Chin Huat have mentioned just now, I think transparency is not embedded in our politicians or
In the culture.
in the cultures, even the civil service. I think to them everything will be chopped with official secrets first. If you want me to disclose, we will disclose the minimum. And I think over the years it actually eroded. It can erode public trust on how things are run.
Okay. Let's say that pre-2018, you can say all that. Too much power, too much control. But that's 7 years ago. So why is it we're not seeing any change now?
We have these efforts to open up. It's very little. But let me say something that most of your liberal followers would probably disagree. I think one of the blessings in disguise we had in this country was the Sheraton move. Why? Because Sheraton move created a hung parliament. You have two governments in that parliament, and then this current government is also from a hung parliament. That prevented the emergence of a strong government. Otherwise, we wouldn't see all this opening up. Like now, Anwar is facing pressure after the defeat, the electoral setback in Sabah, right? He has to talk about all this reform. And some people has been talking about that Anwar is weak because he's heading a coalition government. Has he had an outright majority who would be able to do more? I disagree. I think he would do less, because he would fall back to the old paradigm and give me the power, I do as much good thing as I want on my term. But now, because he doesn't have that control, even though that sometimes you see 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, you still get a net 1 step of progress. I think we are seeing progress. It's just not far enough. And one challenge to that is this whole obsessions with identity. We are so obsessed of whether people are different or similar to us.
You're talking about the Malays, or you're talking about everybody?
Everybody. They may differ in degree, but outright, fundamentally, we are like Singaporeans. If you think about kiasu, we are also kiasu of each other, right? Everyone will look at, just an example, after every budget, you will find people doing analysis. How much money go to the Islamic institution?
Yeah.
Then next thing, how much money go to the Chinese and the Indian community and so on? Everyone try to play that game that we are the loser. Because the moment you feel that you are marginalized, it gives you that self-righteousness. I'm now going to fight for my own. But what happened is when everyone does the same thing, we become the prisoner of a prison that we collectively build together. We lock each other in.
Yeah, that's the right word. We self-locking. Okay, one is the political side. Now, one of the main argument is that, you see, we don't have political funding law. I want to come to that. We don't even make an attempt.
Yes.
Why is that? In the first place, I want to ask you whether it will work to start with, even assuming we have such a political funding law like in America or in England or elsewhere. Why are we not willing to do that?
Let me put it this way. I mean, if you're going to have a political funding law, you have to govern three aspects. Your expenses, where you spend your money, your revenue, where the monies come from, and transparency, where donations are involved, right? Now, why don't we have something for so long? For example, Anwar has been talking a lot of reform, and there's one initiative by the APPGM, All Party Parliamentary Group Malaysia on Political Finance Act, which has even produced, with the help of the Bar Council, IDEA, Project Sama, and so on, with a draft bill. But that draft bill is not going anywhere so far, right? And there's a lack of interest, to our knowledge, from the Prime Minister. Now, why so?
Why?
I will give you a conspiracy. I don't like conspiracy, but I believe this is quite a reasonable attempt. If you are the powerful player and you have access to private money, would you want all this access to be revealed to the public, that people can then examine any conflict of interest? That's one part. Now, one of the very important thing we, as part of the PBGM, putting into the bill is actually public funding. Basically, we are not talking about just the stick, the club on the politician, on the political party. We are talking about carrots. Let's just give you public fund that you legitimately enjoy so that you become less dependent on private funding.
Yeah.
Why is it the government are not interested? Because if you believe that you can have a monopoly of most private fund, why would you want to reduce this and create a more level playing field? Sure. So ultimately, we go back to the same problem, this addiction to political gamble. Even though we talk much about gambling is a bad thing, but when you come to politics, you find this winner takes all mentality. Whoever in power, if they win big enough, then they start thinking that I'm going to win next and next election. I do not want any curtail. I do not want any constraint. But if you start to think that I win today, tomorrow I may lose, but I can win on the day after, then you start thinking that you want a fairer system. You stop buying lottery, you start buying insurance.
Yeah.
And political finance is part of that political insurance we need to buy if you really believe in integrity.
And also the constituency development fund, recognizing shadow cabinets, giving resources to shadow cabinets. All this is actually institutional reforms that will level the playing field.
Sure.
But until today, it has not seen anywhere. It has not seen it goes anywhere. So I think the reason is
so
really
why how come you are both of you so optimistic? Here we have the great reformer Anwar Ibrahim, the Renaissance man, and he can't do it or he won't do it. So what makes you think somebody else lesser who comes along and change it?
Okay, I do not believe in personality. I believe in circumstance. It is the circumstance like the Sheraton move that created a hung parliament that forces reform, that make reform to be possible. take one clear example. If you count all the reforms throughout the years, the most productive 13 months come under Ismail Sabri. He himself is not any Renaissance man, right? We know him.
What is his reform?
Under the MOU with PH, we first get this anti-hopping
Hopping.
law. We have...
Which is nothing now.
well, it's not entirely bad. We can come down to that later, but it's not entirely bad. You imagine that without the anti-hopping law, immediately after the 2022 federal election, it would be a buying time for MP. Right? But that didn't happen because most MPs are controlled by their party. So you're talking about party.
You're not talking about the 6 Bersatu men.
Yes, that come later, and that's come back to the fact that why that it didn't work, and also you have the case in Sabah Bersatu, the Bersatu
Four,
and so
four,
on. Yeah,
four parliamentarians.
yeah. I can talk about that, the shortcomings of the law, but I would not refute, I would not deny the significance of it. And I would want to underline one thing. In our preference, at the time, as per se, we wanted not a rigid anti-hopping law, but a recall law to allow the voters to take action. I concede that anti-hopping law is much more decisive, but it itself is a double-edged sword.
I know. You can pass any law you want.
Yeah.
You can have the best of intention.
Yeah.
But law is only as good as the person who wants to implement it, the person in power. I mean, for example, if the Speaker of Parliament,
Yeah.
if he can make a ruling, if he recognize
Yeah.
that these people are from Bersatu
Yeah.
Yeah.
and make a decision accordingly,
Yeah.
then we wouldn't have that problem.
Okay.
So how integrity comes in here? But how do you change that?
The answer to your questions come from your answer itself. Come from your question itself. Because for me, the biggest flaw of the anti-hopping law, or Article 49A of the Federal Constitution, is when it described the power of the Speaker.
Yeah.
It did not make it explicitly, it's purely implementative. It gives the Speaker the sense that he or she has discretion. Now, the exact problem what we have is this illustrated by the Bersatu 6. It's actually 6 plus 1.
6 plus 1.
Because you have one Adun in Selangor, and one of the Bersatu 6 was also an Adun in Kelantan, right? So the same case were presented to 3 speakers. The Dewan Rakyat speaker, the Kelantan speaker, and the Selangor speaker. And you have 3 different decisions.
Yeah.
And that shows the flaw. But had the law been tightened so well that the speaker just have to carry out what it is, we would have the same
So
answer.
are you saying it was a drafting weakness?
Yes. And we were consulted in that period and so on, but some of this issue, partly because the parties wanted it to be rushed through, they didn't go through the details. For example, Bersatu 4, what happened was that they claimed to have stood under Gagasan Rakyat Sabah, GRS, instead of Bersatu, therefore they were exempted by it. It's a technical scenario that we foreseen.
Okay.
We have foreseen, but it was not, they were not thinking through it. So
I'm glad that a third party such as yourself explained it, because I think it is okay. As I said, intention is good, but somewhere along the way it's not working. So another thing that I want to raise with you now, slightly from this, I think corruption, I always believe it's like it always comes from the top. I think you agree with me, lah? Huh? Now, let's look at the power structure in this country.
Yeah.
Okay, at the top level is of course the monarch. Now, one of the factors, one of the things that you're fighting for is constitutional monarchy in Malaysia, right? Now, I have a slightly more opposite view of yours. I don't think we have constitutional monarchy in this country. But never mind, I'm not going to argue with you. But how do you fight corruption and make people accountable and stable, and whatever the words you use, when the top people, the elites, the monarchy, the istana, you cannot touch them. You cannot even talk about them.
Okay.
You cannot even discuss. There's a police report coming.
No.
And you know, as you know, Fahmi Reza is a cartoonist.
Yeah.
He was just a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And he was just drawing cartoons about Raja, Raya. And, you know, I can see on him. How many times has he been hauled by the police? Now, if that happens, and that happens regularly, to a cartoonist, someone who just depicts a satire of some sort, what hope do we have?
I think if you look at it positively, Fahmi has done a great work in educating Malaysian rakyat.
Yeah.
One thing what I like about his activism is that he doesn't just go and do something out of impulse.
Yeah.
He actually has a whole thing thought through. So he will go in, and then when the police call him, he happily show out and say, "Oh, this is a love letter I have with the police," and so on. In that process, he helped dismantle fear.
Yes,
Now,
I think so. I
back-
think you're right.
So every time police get him into something, I think it's a good thing. I mean, okay, the last few years have not been much into those things, but previously, when I was unlawfully detained by police and beaten up, they actually pay a price. They draw attention to things that otherwise people would overlook. Right?
Yeah.
So I think in some sense, resistance is never fatal.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can always have some impact. But coming back to your question, how do we stop corruption right at the top? We are not getting into the details, but everyone knows what we are talking about,
Yes.
right? Now, if you have unelected institutions that can actually outpower the elected structure,
Okay.
namely your cabinet, your government, your executive, and your legislature, it really comes down to two things. One, whether the people want it. Second, whether your political class is united with the mandate the people have given to them to stand up to all unelected institutions. So the problem here is that, one, our people often do not see things as such. We do not think as individual. We think as collective, right? In the worst scenario, we are so kiasu. We would be happy if another group, people we define as the other, suffer losses. We would be happy even if we suffer losses, as long as they suffer more, right? This is deeply irrational, but it's unfortunately very much part of the fact. Now, if we can overcome that fear of each other, overcome that fear of differences, if we can be truly faithful, I'm not a Muslim, but to the teachings of Al-Hujarat 13, right? That we will make different so that we can recognize each other. If we stick true to that, overcome our fear, it's much harder for people to play up all these things. Yeah. I'm not painting a picture that the moment we do this, we have no conflict, right? But we'll be much more rational to examine where our conflict lies. We would be able to look at the overlapping one and start negotiating. We may not be happy all the time, but we can get along and move along, right? But now we are not. Now, the second problem with that is not just at the population level, but at our political class. A mature society requires a political elite class that see each other as rival, but not enemy. For example, both of you are lawyers, right?
I was.
Okay. But let's say in the legal communities, highly competitive, lawyers are competitors to each other, especially if you work a similar case. You would appear sometimes on the different sides in the court, right? But lawyer is also one of the professions that is most united, most organized. Your bar in most countries in the world as the beacon of civil rights and so on. Why? That's how modern society operates. We are always competitors and also collaborators. But unfortunately, you do not see this in our politics. Our politicians are happy to destroy their opponents because they think they can, therefore they can monopolize the power. So if you some people like to compare politics to war, right? Now, what we are seeing now is very much that ugly side. We want to destroy our opponent because we disagree with them. We cannot see them as legitimate opponent,
Yes.
worthy of the same treatment, same right we enjoy. But there's another paradigm that we can take from this warring instinct of humans, sport. We develop sport as a way to compete, to satisfy our tribal instinct, to cheer and so on. But in sport, we don't strive to destroy our opponents, right? We just want to defeat them. We want them to come back, then we can only win them in the next tournament. That's what we need to do. Elections should become like World Cup football. Every 4 years you come back again, but you don't want to go out and destroy them. And of course, you can't cheat by getting fake heritage players as well.
Okay, I just want to. He mentioned in glowing terms about the contribution of people like Fahmi Reza. His courage, the way he does it. How can we have more Fahmi Reza in this country? I mean, you're a young activist. You tell me.
I think he is an inspiration to a lot of the young people. That is
You think the young people today are much more courageous than during my time?
I think so.
Yeah. they are
How dare you? Okay, carry on.
Yeah. So I think more people who stand up, resist, give inspirations to the other people, it will actually have the ripple effect. So yeah. And
Yeah.
we do have a vibrant civil society as well.
You think so?
I let me put it this way. I think it's quite common for people of your generation, sometimes my generation, look at today and feel pessimistic, sometimes even despair, because we see part of society has become more conservative. I'll put it this way, it's what happened in the past. This is our spectrum. So this is conservative, this is liberal. Today you do see people who get much more conservative, but you also see people who get more liberal. And so what we are seeing is not just leaning over here, it's actually spreading out of the spectrum. You think of a bell curve, the bell curve is now much wider. And also another thing that I have learned from some opinion polls that I have done, and this is particularly on Muslim, I find that if you ask the publics certain issues on two competing positions, if you frame it in a very legitimate way, majority of the public will agree with you, even these two are opposite, right? So what it means is that a lot of people are actually in the middle. It depends on how you persuade them to swing over. This is where, if you do it right, you can actually get the middle ground to swing over without them thinking that they are changing their entire identity, their religious, their cultural, their political position. They just see that this is part of the possibilities that I can take on, right? But you do it wrongly, then they feel pushed the corner, and you ask them an either-or questions, they'll be exactly on the opposite side. So I think we have reason to be optimistic.
Okay. The one thing that quite new phenomenon, I would say, now is this regional
Sabah.
Sarawak. Sabah first, Sarawak first. I hope you are not from Sarawak.
No.
Okay.
I'm a pseudo Sabahan.
Oh, you are pseudo Sabahan, and you are not.
No, I'm
Okay.
not.
Everybody talks about first this, first that. But when someone from here say, "Are you a first Malay?" That was many years ago. Somebody, I was member in Parliament. They asked Muhyiddin, I think, "Are you Malay first?"
Yeah.
Wow, big outcry. Now it's like accepted. Sarawak first, Sabah first. Why the difference?
I think it's a bouncing back of long suppressed identity. So at the point in the past, Sabahan, for example, after the ISA detentions of Jeffrey Ketegangan, they were very unhappy. They kept quiet, but they felt that Malaysia was basically new colonization of Borneo, right? And what happened after 2008, when the center fragmented, they felt that this is a time to speak up.
Okay.
And what I want to draw to this is that if you look at today, the Sabah elections, many people would say this is the rise of regionalism, right? As the denial, rejections of Malayan party. But let's look at this argument of who are the Sabah party. If you look at the main Sabah parties in these elections, those outright with a clear-cut position would be Warisan, and then you have Star, you have APCO, then you have GRS, right? And who are they? When do they actually cut tie? Let's look at the largest one, Gagasan and Warisan, and their competitors, UMNO. People read it and say, you see, UMNO Sabah was defeated because that people want local parties. Is it true? Gagasan, Warisan, and UMNO Sabah, they were basically the same type of animal. Unlike UMNO in Semenanjung or Bersatu, Semenanjung, and PAS, here the parties are ideological. So it's not just about defending Malay-Muslim interests, but there's a strong nationalist ideology. In Sabah, not really. It's much more electoral pack, election machines that bring together the local notables who represent different clans, different ethnic groups, and this is how they compete, right? And at one point, if you look at the height of UMNO Sabah, it controlled 53% of Sabah state seats. And together with BN, together with others, Sabah BN control 98%. What happened today? The 1MDB split caused Warisan to walk out, first group. And this group was mainly led by Shafi'i from Bajau Sempurna.
Yeah.
And the second group came after the collapse of UMNO. They moved to the outskirts of UMNO in Semenanjung. They moved to Bersatu at the end of 2018. And then by 2022, they evolved into Gagasan, right? How different are this group? Wawasan may be a bit more different, but how different is Gagasan or GRS from UMNO Sabah?
Yeah.
It's basically the same one, right? So what you're seeing here is very shallow product differentiation. Now, having said this, I'm not denying the rightful anger, resentment of the Sabahan and Sarawakians over their mistreatment under MA63. But what I want to point out is that what we are seeing in the Sabah election is it's not necessarily the explanation. What determines the outcome in the ground is very much personalities and patronage. Who go down and give the money to help the people? People vote for these local candidates much more than whatever ideology they espouse. This is why if you look at the Bumiputra parts, I don't think it doesn't explain at all. So but why would Warisan talk about Sabah for Sabahan so much? Because that allowed them to connect to the KDMR, to the Chinese. Without that, you can't actually go beyond and say that you are more than Bajau Sama or East Coast, right?
Sure.
But for KDMR, it's even much more straightforward. Talking about Sabah right is a dog whistling talking about KDMR right. Because they have always been critical of the federal. Now, for the Chinese, yes, I think it has some impact. There are people who are not happy with this. Both Chinese and KDMR do look at Sarawak with envy. So that explains a little bit, but not the whole picture.
I find it very odd that you describe that we are mistreating the Sabah Sarawak.
Sorry?
MA63.
Okay.
I thought it's the other way around.
I would like to hear you.
Yeah, I can't go to Sabah Sarawak if they don't allow me.
I'm blocked from Sarawak.
Yeah, but how could that be?
Okay. Let's have to
Okay,
come
I mean,
back.
just one example.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into detail.
Sure.
Huh?
Yeah.
After 70 years, 65 years,
Yeah.
I cannot go to another part of my country.
Okay. Let me.
So how can you say I'm mistreating you? It's the other way around. Like, I don't know if I can go to Sabah, Sarawak now with all my podcasts.
Yeah, sure. I think we have to separate this. That when Sabah and Sarawakian talk about mistreatment, they're talking about effective control from Semenanjung. For example, you go back to 1960, both the first chief minister, Stephen Kalong Ningkang in Sarawak and Donald Stephen in Sabah, they were ousted because of federal pressure,
Sure.
right? So for a long period of time, you cannot have your own government without the federal pressing. Even today, some people will read the same thing, right? Albert Tay and so on. That's part of the story. And they were also, of course, very resentful because they look at their development is much more way behind Semenanjung. The common thing they like to talk about is that the Twin Towers, one is built by Sarawak, one is built by Sabah, instead of in their homeland. Right? But coming back to the immigration control, as I'm the victim, and so I think I'm in a legitimate position to put this in context. We have that. It was meant to protect Sabah and Sarawak from influx of labor from Semenanjung and Singapore, because we were much more, both Malaysian and Singaporean were much more competitive. If we rush in, we will take away their job. It's how people feel of immigrants.
You want to defend a proposition, you can find 100 reasons for it.
No, but that was exactly...
Yeah, that was
exactly
50 years
in that.
ago.
Yes.
But
yes.
now...
Yes. So what we actually need to look at is the whole questions of revision. I think MA63 is not perfect. I have taken this stance openly that MA63 should be treated as a floor, not the ceiling of decentralization.
I agree with you.
And then we should actually renegotiate, right? But we cannot sort of like selectively dismiss this part. But I would actually stand firm on this. For example, you and I are not allowed to go in. Which state that deny your entry?
No, nobody.
Okay.
I'm just saying, on paper, I could be stopped at the airport.
Yes, I have been stopped.
Yeah.
And I'm still
And
stopped.
I don't think it's right. There's no country in the world that practice that.
Okay.
None.
You
tell me which country?
Because we do not want to end up in the problems like in Indonesia, where you have trans immigrations that many of the native feel that they were displaced by internal immigrants. Xinjiang, the minorities were very resentful. Xinjiang Tibetans that the Han Chinese flood in, formerly the Baltic states of Soviet Union, the Russian flood in. Right, so I can see why we have this, but the part that I want to question is this: the law was supposed to prevent people to go in to look for rice bowl, right?
Yeah.
So in my case, if I go to Sarawak and I say I want to teach political science, it's legitimate for you to kick me out because I steal away someone's job. If I go in to sell kolomi, you can do the same thing. But if I go in to promote a political idea, that's not supposed to be the reason that you bar me.
Yeah.
Because the law, I think, is Section 66 of the Immigration Act actually say that if I go in for a legitimate political activity, I cannot be denied entry. If I go in for federal purpose, cannot be denied entry.
Okay, Chow-Ying, let me ask you again, because you are a younger generation.
Yeah.
No, I'm not convinced. Please convince me that I thought that the younger groups today, except for a few vocal, I think they were more scared of doing things on a political level. They're less interested, let me put it that way.
You think so?
And that's part of fear, I think so. I don't know, there may be groups like, well-known groups like Bersama, whatever, but even then, I see there's less and less participation. People are skeptical, not just here. In most places in the world, the young don't care. And I sense that a trend here too. Like, they may not as dramatic as the way I explained it, but I sense there's a bit of apathy. Like, wow, it's not going to make any difference. Because you know why? For example, I noticed that look at political parties. Like MCA. Like I don't know about DAP. DAP may be more. You look at the MIC. You look at even UMNO. I don't see young people coming up. I don't see being allowed to come up.
That one I agree.
So how are you going to change things?
Giving more opportunity, opening up the systems that allow the. But I think a lot of the young people nowadays. I mean, I have niece that is 18, 19 years old. They are very influenced by, again, social media, TikTok, and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you are one of their influences.
No, I don't know, but
And so I think that plays a part of how the young generations actually look at politics as well. But the circle that we engage with, the mahasiswa, the young, student activists, they are outspoken. There are students that are really outspoken, but again, whether they are really those extra,
how old is let me tell you, how old is Fahmi Reza?
Fahmi Reza is probably about our age, slightly younger than us. 2-3
So
years.
does he belong to the young or?
I think he
Our
is
generation.
above the young youth.
Yeah, but the
section,
young
any of
don't
the
even
youth
come and
sections.
support him. I mean, I don't see a.
Okay, let me put it this way. I think there are two things that I can give you as exact example. Now, one at Sabah, you do see signs of young people rising up. There's one protest against water supply. Now, that's very, very daily life, right? But they do organize that. They embarrass the government. And you have a group of students suing their teacher for not attending to class. That is also something quite remarkable. But the other one is actually widespread. It's this keadilan for Zara. That's go everywhere. I think we do have a fertile ground for things to evolve and emerge. Is questions whether we are seeing the right timing. And sometimes history, like people say, history is a bad motorist. He doesn't put up the signal before taking a turn, right? The Arab Spring, North Africa and Middle East was very quiet before Arab Spring, and suddenly things get turned around. What I feel, I think there are two trends that I see in the younger generation. One is great resentment. I can understand. Like your generation is much easier for you to buy property. Our generation work a bit harder. We can still do this. I dare not to say that's applied the same for the next generation. So they do have this resentment, and that as the population grow older, they have to bear the burden for pension fund and so on. That's globally, you have this resentment. Young people, they are the reason why populism gets so popular, right? The other part is what you have described, apathy. And that's probably has to do with technological advances. You grow up in a much more fragmented world. You no longer have a public. You have very different echo chambers. You live with your own self-defined communities and so on. So there are issues. But I would not rule that out. But coming back to your last question about how do we get parties opening up for young leaders to rise up, so that by the time they become prime minister, they are not 70 and 80s and they become too conservative. I think what we need is more election. We have to flatten the career path, right? Let's say you go back to the old UMNO. You have to start right at the bottom, from your cawangan to your bahagian, and then by the time you get to state, you get to federal, and you have to be with the right boss, right factional boss. Otherwise, you go back back to square one, right? And we need to break this. For example, what we should pursue is mayoral and councillor election for KL. Now, why I'm talking about KL? Because we are not talking about the third vote. We are talking about second vote. Assembly for KL is akin to the Dun in Selangor. So if Selangor people can have their own elected legislature and elected
why
can't KL people?
I agree with you.
What's wrong with us KL people, right? You're Selangor people. You're privileged Selangor people. We are KL people, right? Why should we KL people be denied that?
But they're not going to do it, right?
They're not going to do it unless we can actually get people to see we are not each other enemy, right? I think the easiest way for politicians to stay in power, to live without effective checks and balances, is to get us to fear each other. We should not let politicians to divide us and rule us, but we should divide and rule them. We should encourage politicians to be divided.
So, Mr. Chin Huat and Chow-Ying, are you not fearful of past?
Yes, I am fearful of a society that has only one set of value, right? For me, what I fear for is not a particular vehicle. I fear for any vehicle that go that direction. I fear for a homogenizing society. I fear that there's only one standard, that everyone has to conform to it.
So, can you answer my question? Are you fearful of past?
I'm fearful of past if we come into power.
Okay. So, how do you resolve that? Coming back to your premise that we got to be friendly with each other, election is just not between enemies. How do you come to that?
We have to look back and say, why is past so powerful? There are two elements of it. One element is theological, right?
Sure.
It's very ideological. And that is some things you would find in other Malay-based party at a different degree. Now, dear, you don't think that Bersatu is conservative? UMNO is conservative, but it's not to the same level. UMNO has its own ulama and so on. Do you think they're fundamentally different? I think it's a matter of degree.
Sure, I agree with you. I agree with you. But you can live with UMNO, but how come you have difficulty with past?
No, I'm not having a particular fear just for past.
Okay.
I fear that, say, if all the parties would just become one, right? Whether if it could be UMNO, it could be PAS, could be Bersatu, if they become one and they impose their ideology on us, I'll be fearful. It's the same thing. If it just turn out to be, say, DAP or PKR, everyone become one, I'll be fearful.
And Chow-Ying, you are DAP, I'm sure.
No.
Never.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyway, I really want to thank you. We've come to the end of our conversation.
Sure.
Chin Huat, I really enjoyed this, and I hope our listeners will also benefit from our discourse, our discussion. And I would like to invite both of you again, anytime you are free. Maybe not so broad a topic, maybe we pick something more focused.
Sure. We can talk about KL elections, for example.
Yeah. I'm all for election.
Yeah.
I'm all for election. And I would like to invite you again, and then we can see how we can make your Sama.
Yeah.
What is Sama? To get more stability, accountability. What else?
For Malaysia.
For Malaysia. Maybe we can achieve that objective together. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.